kind of the overview of how the robot is set up. Once you've taken them from Illustrator and you've drawn the robot, what you would do with it in After Effects. None of the stuff is new. I just want you to see how it's set up, just so you can see how I set it up. Robot. All right. So first thing, my Illustrator file. We'll get to that. I'm gonna actually make a new project just so we can start from a scratch-ish point. The biggest thing, you have to separate all your stuff. Okay, so just like everything else, like anything you want to move separately, we have to be able to separate. And so like the shoulder, we have that ball for the shoulder, that's on one layer. The bicep is on another layer. The elbow is on another layer. The forearm's on another layer. The hand is on another layer. So you'll see how many layers you're going to have when you work with this Robot 02. Adorable. So you see all my different layers that I have here. I have one layer for each eyebrow, and of course I've labeled each layer. Obviously that's going to help you, so when you get into After Effects, it all makes sense, so that you don't have like layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 75, and you just don't know what anything is. So I have these two eyebrow layers. Let me hide my stuff here. Hide bounding marks. No, how do I turn that thing off? What is that? I don't know. It's going to bother me if I don't turn it off. Whatever. So there's the left and right eyebrow. Here's the two eyes. There's the nose. And you'll see how each piece kind of has a little bit of detail in them. Not like a crazy amount, but it has some detail in it. I did not do any like crazy text stroke widths on this one because it's a robot, kind of mechanical. I didn't want to like vary the stroke on the robot itself, so I just kept everything very just flat. You can see even here, like where his nose is, this is like a bolt or something, so I have like two little bolt things there. I have his mouth, which is here, but then I also have these like lines that just add a little bit of detail to it. Okay, so if this is like a screen, then I would have the lines around the screen just to kind of give like accents to it. Here's his neck, and scooting down to his belly. We have some dials. I have some dial holes. Now the dial holes are not going to be animated. Like the dials themselves may be twisted, but the dial holes are not going to be, so I just left those as one layer. And then I have my slider, which obviously I may want to slide up or down. And then I have these little switches. Now these things, when I animate them, I'm trying to think ahead of time. All they're going to do is go from this look to that look. So all I have to do is in After Effects, when I am ready for one of these, just rotate it around and move it up. You know, not actually like animate it doing that, but just have it go from one spot to the next spot. That's all he would do, okay? So some of these things you can kind of like cheat on. Even my dials, you're not going to see him like twisting it. Like he can move his hand and it'll do something, but you're not going to see the little dial things twisted. It's just too tiny of a detail. So some of the stuff, you know, I've maybe gone a little bit too in-depth on, but no big deal. Here's the power button, so that way he has something to turn on. And then there's the power button background. Here's switch holes. Here's a card slot, so you can insert that card we talked about last time. Here's his screen lines, just like his mouth had. Here's a screen. There's his eye sockets, which are these things. And then here's his right wrist. And then here's a little claw thing that I built. And then the left wrist. Claw thing I built there. Forearm. Body. And then all the way down to the legs. Okay, so you see everything is separated. That's the key here. Everything is separated. No, don't say. So when I come into After Effects and I bring the dude in, one thing I have to notice is my labeling here. See how it says Robot 1 and then Robot 2? If I have, by the default settings, if I have this button clicked, it'll read Robot 1 and Robot 2 as like a movie. And it'll actually like toggle between the two and it'll kind of look freaky. So I have to make sure that this is turned off and then bring in Robot 2. And then the same thing we did before. Composition. Layer size, yes. Oops. Not there though. Composition, retain layer size, perfect. And then I get the robot in here. Now another thing I did is I changed the size of it, just like we did on our All About Me. I shrunk the size of that artboard just to kind of fit him. I didn't need it to have a huge size, so just to kind of keep things a bit smaller, I just shrunk it to fit him inside there. Now all these things are acting independently, right? So if I grab his eyebrow, it moves independently. If I grab the head, it moves independently. So the next step in this is to go through and start parenting all the stuff, okay? So like the eyebrows themselves, I'd want to move like with the head. Like when the head moves left or right or tilts side to side, I want all of those things to move. So I would grab all of the things that are part of the head, like that, and I would change their parent over here to be part of the head layer, which is way down here. Face. There you go. Alright, so now when I grab the face and I move it, it grabs all that stuff and moves it with it. Now my eye sockets did not go because for some reason they moved into there. So we'll just move these up. It's a good spot for them. And we'll also set these to be part of the face. So now when I grab this and move it, that whole thing is going to move. Okay? Now the next step I did for this is I know that like the eyebrows and other stuff, I may want to keep that on a separate layer altogether. So I could also pre-compose all the stuff and put it into another group. For now, I'm not going to do that. Same thing with all these dials that we did. So all my dials and stuff, when the body moves, I probably want all the dials and screens and all that stuff to move with it. So I would grab all my dials, my dial holes, my sliders, slider open, slider 2 open, my 3 switches, my power button background, switch holes, card slot background, screen line, screen, I think that's it. And I would assign this to the body. So now when I grab the body and move it, all that stuff goes with it. Now this is where it may get a little bit confusing when you're doing the arms, okay? So looking at your arm, if I move my fingers, you can see that my shoulder doesn't move, right? And if I move my forearm, my shoulder still doesn't move. But if I move my shoulder, that's going to move my forearm, and when my forearm moves, that's going to move my fingers, okay? So I need to parent things in a specific way. So my right robot claw is going to be parented to the right wrist. My right wrist is going to be parented to the right forearm. My right forearm is going to be parented to my right shoulder. And my right shoulder is going to be parented to the body. There we go. So now if I grab the body and move it, you'll see how that whole mess moves together. Now if I go into the shoulder and move it, you'll see how the whole arm moves together. Now we typically wouldn't move the arm, we would simply just rotate the arm. Rotates are all based on where the pivot is or the anchor point is. So I need to go into my pivot mode and just scoot my pivot to where I want this to rotate from. Same thing here, put this where I want this to rotate from. Same thing here, that's good. Same thing here. This would rotate maybe there. This would rotate from maybe there. Okay. So if I go to my right claw now and I go to rotate, look how I can just rotate that. And I can also go to my right top claw and rotate and do that. Okay. Now we could also set this thing up, add a little bit more detail to this, because I'm assuming like his claws, they would always go opposite, right? So when they open, they both open. When they close, they both close. So there's no point in, I can't grab both of these and do this because they're both moving in the same direction. I actually want them to move like opposite each other. So if I go to Alt and I click on the stopwatch for rotate, so I can say that the transform.rotation equals a transform, equals, no, this guy's rotation. So I just use the little pick whip thing and drag it to here, and I'm going to multiply it times -1. So what that should do is when this one rotates positive 15, the other one's going to rotate negative 15. So now when I come into this one and I rotate it, you can see how much easier that's going to be setting one key on that specific item. Cool. Alright, now if I go to my right wrist and I rotate the wrist, you'll see that both of those items go with it. if I go to my right forearm and I rotate my right forearm, you'll see that those go with it. And when I go to my right shoulder and I rotate that, that one would also go with it. Okay. Now I've also kind of set this up in a certain way because if I don't parent things in the correct order, I don't layer things in the right order, I can't do certain things easily. So one of the things I want to be able to do is obviously put that little card inside of his stomach. So with this, I had to make sure that his shoulder was on a back layer. So the shoulder is actually behind the body. That's why it's getting cut off right here. But the forearm is actually in front of the body. Okay, so watch how I rotate the shoulder down like this. And then I go to my forearm and I rotate. Oh no. All that stuff is on top of it. That's no big deal. All I have to do is grab all that stuff. Neck, dials, there we go. And just scoot it below all of that. There we go. Right in front of body, but right behind all the other stuff. Cool. Alright, so now his right forearm is in front of it. And then I could just keep playing with this until I get his right shoulder, which is right down here. Just rotate that back some. Rotate this forearm some. And you can see how I can get that pretty close to where that's going to be. And then I have right wrist also. That could also help me rotate and get this into position. Okay? So I can have him grab a card from wherever, I don't know where, pulls it out of his hat, and then he sticks it in there. Yes, sir.
Is there possibly an easier way, like a rigging type thing that we could do in After Effects?
There is a rigging tool, but I'm not going to go through the rigging tool. If you want to explore it, it's called Duic.
Is it defaultly in there? Or
No, you have to download it and install it. I believe it's free. I could be totally wrong. But this is just a set of animation tools, and this is probably one of the most popular ones that's out there because a lot of the stuff I'm doing, it kind of does it automatically. But if you don't have the knowledge or the time to play with this, the stuff that we're doing is pretty basic compared to all the stuff and bells and whistles that it has.
Okay.
So, really cool thing.
You, spell it, just so I can take a look at it.
D-U-I-K.
Oh, okay. Right.
Duic. Okay. So, I always reset this back to the defaults when I'm done. Just kind of play around with it, make sure it's working, and I just reset those back to where they were. Okay? So I do the same thing for this arm. I do the same thing for this. The foot gets parented to this. This gets parented to that. That gets parented to the body. Everyone's happy. Okay. So I'm just going to save this as test robot. Or 1. And then I'll open up my other guy. Alright, so this is just me playing around, just testing stuff out. There's no harm in just kind of like seeing like what can we do. So with this one, I thought it'd be kind of neat. There you go. This is just an audio file. This doesn't have any of the other animation to it. Just wanted like the appearance part. So the ground flips down, opens up, and then he pops in. This circle won't be there. I just have to expand my fill strokes. A little bit more. There we go. Maybe a little bit more on this one. This one. Cool. Alright, so it goes down. Alright. Now, one thing that's happening here too, you'll see that he comes up, and then he's like rotating a little bit, right? So his hands are kind of moving, his head is kind of tilting. So that's all just extra animation that I did. And then on the robot himself, let me go into body parts here. Here's the screen, and so what I did was I dropped that audio file, that dubstep that I found in there, and then I added some just effects to this. We'll get into that later, but I just want you to see. Oops, let me set this to full so that we can see it. So you can see how this is lining up with the audio. It's matching a certain beat in the audio, and that little blue thing is like bouncing to that beat. Okay? And then this is just the spectrum. This is what the audio file looks like. So this is kind of the idea of what we're going to be taking with this. So we can have him come in my case, my guys. Come on. He's going to stick the card in, hit a button, and then it's going to start going. And then the little display will be up there so you can see the little thing going. That little circle will be bouncing. And then he can play with the controls to do different things. Maybe he pushes a button and then something else pops up on the screen, or it changes an image, or something else pops up in the background, or whatever. Okay? So that's the process that we're going to be going through. So take your stuff into Illustrator, draw them out, organize it, layers, the whole 9 yards. Then bring it in After Effects and start putting the robot together so that we can animate the robot as one big unit. Okay? By the time he's done, you should have one spot, like the body. That's usually where you would have that. And if I grab the body and move it, you can see how I can move all the pieces with it, because everything eventually gets parented back into the body. Okay? Any questions? All right.